Hello my fellow travelers, welcome back to my channel. My name is Ina and I've just come back from beautiful China where I went by myself. I organized everything and I don't speak any Chinese, so I'd like to encourage you with this series that I'm making on China to go and explore it as well by yourself. And today we are going to visit the beginning of the Great Wall. It's a place that I have not heard anyone talk about before, so I'd like to take you with me. But behind me here is the Remarkables Mountain in Queenstown, New Zealand, where I live. Let's go to the Great Wall. Today we are visiting this absolutely fascinating place, the Old Dragon's Head. And this is the temple of the goddess of the sea. And we are at the place where the Great Wall meets the Bohai Sea. Let's start. Here, well, we are at the beginning of the Great Wall in the Dragon's Head. So we're just going to enter. We're already inside. This behind me is the ticket check-in point. So we're just going to go and look at the entry of the wall. Just gonna scan it in. So as I said before, I had no idea that this place existed until I got there. Don't you love this about travel? There's so many incredible places and experiences that we have never heard of, and suddenly you get there, you see it and you experience it. So this place here is the Laolongtou, or the Old Dragon's Head. It's very famous in China, but us foreigners haven't really heard much of it. So this is the place where the Great Wall meets the Bohai Sea. The Old Dragon's Head was one of the three most significant passes of the Great Wall and the most important one during the Ming Dynasty. Its purpose was to stop the Manchu advancing from the north. The place that we are entering now, it's called Ninhai City. It was also built during the Ming Dynasty and it was housing the soldiers that were stationed at that border. This ancient city was the only city on the Great Wall that was located by the sea. Here we can see the place where the soldiers were grinding all the grains that they were growing. It is showing the different tools that they were using. So the soldiers were tasked with growing their own food. They were growing their own grains, and here they were sifting the grains and processing them. Here in this kitchen the soldiers were cooking. Obviously this part here was definitely not part of their kitchen, but they were producing all of their own food. They were planting their crops, they were processing all the grains, and here in this part they were cooking. One of the pots that they had could cook for about 900 people, and that was just in one go. And that is the pot that we are just about to see now. Look, so that pot here can cook for 900 soldiers at one time. Amazing, right? There's some money that people have thrown in there. Maybe to help the soldiers. Joking, of course. Sometimes they call this place a seaside castle, and as you can tell, it had everything that the soldiers might have needed. They had the place to produce food, to cook, They had the place to pray like this one. They had a little jail where the ones who didn't obey the rules were placed. And here in front of us is the place where they kept their war horses, the stables. Oh, that's the jail. Well, it was used to imprison the military personnel that broke the law. So let me tell you how I actually decided to come to this place, to Shanhaiguan, and how I discovered the old dragon's head. When I got to Beijing, I started making plans to visit the Great Wall. And I discovered that the minimum I had to spend were 3 hours just in one direction. Then I had to obviously spend time on the Great Wall, and then there was another 3 hours return. That wasn't sounding very appealing, so I started looking for 4 different alternatives. I looked at the map and I found a place that was next to the Great Wall. I booked a ticket for the train, I booked a hotel, and I left Beijing to come and explore this new place that I had never heard of. So the hotel that I had booked was right in the middle of Shanhaiguan, or the first pass under heaven, and I'm going to tell you about this in the next episode. And as I arrived there, I was reading the brochures, and this is how I found out about this place, the Old Dragon's Head, which was only 5 kilometers away from Shanhaiguan. So here we are. The whole of the ancient city is surrounded by a wall. You can walk all around it on that wall, and there are very few people. It is very, very peaceful, beautiful, shady, and unlike other sections of the Great Wall where there's just too many people, here it is very, very relaxing. So this bit here circles the whole city, and now we're going to have a little view of the city. This is just a playground for the kids. If people come with children and they want to experience how the soldiers were training, then they can go to that playground. And they're just the cicadas, and it is just relaxing. There are very, very few tourists. The only tourists actually that I saw, foreign tourists, were Russian. I never met any English-speaking tourists, and lucky I speak some Russian. Sometimes when I was in trouble and I couldn't actually find my way, I would ask them. So here again we are seeing the city, and you can see, I mean, it's definitely not crowded. We were there before as well, in that area there with the jail, the little fortress. So it's just a bird's eye view, and this is just the background. Yes, as I was saying, there are basically no tourists. They were in this particular place. I only saw a couple of pairs of Russian tourists. There was a young couple, and there was one family, and a girl by herself as well. But that's about it. So we are now walking on top of the wall, and as you can see, I mean, there's nobody. And here, this is the old section. They have put it under the glass to protect it. It's one of the original sections, and this is the only place that you can see it from. Later on in the video, you're actually going to see how the stones are held together. And this area here is for the kids, little labyrinth. Very, very adorable, and there were a few children playing there. And a little fruit tree. I think it's an apricot tree, but I couldn't actually see any fruits on it. So yeah, you can see the labyrinth, the kids playing, very relaxing. Now we are down already and we're just going to explore the actual city and see what's here. Inside all of the attractions that you visit in China, there is always food. There are lots of different drinks, and now was summer, so obviously watermelon was one of the fruits in season. You can always use Alipay and WeChat. You can see there on the left. And in another episode I'm going to show you how to use Alipay in China. Okay, let's get down to the seaside and see where the Great Wall meets the sea. We are going to take this little path here through the forest and get to the sea. You can actually hear the sea from here and you can see it.
That's the sea.
There.
We have arrived at the sea. Wow. So I'm not sorry that I didn't bring my dogs because it's a no swimming area. So that's good news. Look. Just gonna go up there. There you can see the Great Wall. So behind me is the sea. I think it's the Bohai Sea, but I'm not 100% sure how to pronounce it. And we're just going to go to this building to see what they are. And on the other side, behind me is the beginning of the Great Wall. We'll get there as well. Exciting, right? It's the Dragon's Head. We're entering the temple of the goddess of the sea. It was destroyed in the 1900s by the Allied forces and it was rebuilt in 1989. The Allied forces that I mentioned were alliance of 8 nations that fought against Imperial China in the early 1900s. It's not the same as it used to be. They've taken certain elements. And the reason it's not the same is because it was bombarded by the Allied forces in 1900s. So this is the drum tower. You can see the drum. Apparently they beat it at sunset. And the bell is rung at sunrise. And the bell tower. Beautiful bell. Part of this same complex of the bell tower is this beautiful temple which is dedicated to the goddess of the sea, and next to it there is another temple that is dedicated to the god of the sea. But as I said before, they were not the original buildings because the original ones were destroyed by the Allied forces and these ones were reconstructed in the 1980s. So this is the goddess hall. The goddess of the sea. According to an inscription that I read inside the temple, it was saying that this girl that they epitomized here was a very young girl who was an excellent swimmer, and she would always save anybody in trouble in the water. She would swim out and everyone would pray to her before they set on a fishing expedition. So we're gonna enter the Sea God Temple, which is this one. So the architect who was in charge of reconstructing this complex here in the 1980s used a lot of traditional Chinese temple designs, and these mannequins here are also featuring some of the attire that the soldiers were using during the imperial time. These deities were very much favored by the Taoists, and all the kings were also worshipping them, and they had special ceremonies in their honor. So it's very important that this is here next to the sea. The air is quite humid, but there is a pleasant breeze from the sea. Obviously, in the olden days, this sea here, the Bohai Sea, was super important for the people. They were getting a lot of their food from there. Lots of fishing. Today there isn't as much fishing because it's quite polluted, and there is a lot of petrol extraction going on from that sea. It's very shallow, it's only 18 meters deep. We are gonna leave the temple now and head towards the beginning of the wall. So as you come out, you've got a lot of these little cars. If you don't want to walk too much, you can get a car. We walk on this boulevard. I didn't want to take a cart, although I could, but it's just a short walk. So that's the temple of the goddess of the sea and the god of the sea that we came from. And over there is the exit. There is an amusement park. There are a lot of useful signs. So Ninhai 100 meters, the Shanhai Tower 130, and the stone wall 210. Let's check it out. Now this is quite cool. So cool. So behind me you can see the beginning of the Great Wall in Ninhai Town. We're going to explore. Let's climb. The stairs were a little bit steep, but not as steep as Jiaoshan, which is in my other episode. So once we climbed the stairs, we got to this platform from where you can see the sea and you can see the beach and where we came from the temples. And this is probably the most crowded area of the whole complex, because it heads to the very beginning of the wall, the old dragon's head. But I mean, you can see that compared to other videos that one can see online, there is almost nobody here. So there in front of us is the actual head of the dragon. And that's where we were, in the temple of the god and the goddess of the sea. This part of the wall was also fully renovated. It was actually buried under the sea. They didn't even know that it was there, and then as they were doing the renovations, they uncovered it. So this was buried in the sand. It looks like this is the old part. It's covered under glass protection. Just gonna enter. See what's happening. Some of the original stones. In this part here you can see some of the original stones and replicas that show how they used to fit into each other, and the glue that would hold them together was something very, very unusual, which was glutinous rice mixed with sand, earth and lime, and that kind of cement glued them and held them for many centuries. Incredible. Everyone is taking photos here. I can't be bothered lining up. It's the start, head of the dragon. So from this unique position, the soldiers would have had an excellent view of the north, of the south, of all the dangers lurking, and you can imagine why it was such an important viewpoint and such an important fortress. Going down from here, you can walk on the wall. Here we are on top of the wall that circles the whole city, and you can either go from here or on the other side. And this is the young couple that I told you about, the Russian tourists that I spoke to. And this is where our tour ends. There is a junction and you can turn left or right, and that's where we began our circle around the wall. The weather was a little bit warm and a little bit humid, but nothing that one cannot handle. And as you can see, a lot of people are with umbrellas to protect themselves from the sun. And it's a little bit steep, but not as steep as Jiaoshan. And then walking around the wall, around the city, is just very, very easy, very flat. And I got home on this little car that I paid with my Alipay, because I didn't have any cash on me, so I couldn't get the bus. And it was a very fun ride. Look how beautiful the city is. To get to Laolongtou, I actually took the bus, but my usual card didn't work on the bus, so one of the passengers gave me 2 yuan to pay for the bus, and now I couldn't go back on the bus and I had to use my Alipay, and this was the only option that I had, besides a taxi, which was a bit boring. Thank you for watching the whole episode, and thank you for accompanying me to the Dragon's Head, to the old Dragon's Head. It's not just the Dragon's Head. And I hope that you will watch the next episode as well, which is again about this area. Bye!